Well, on to the latest following this Jaire Alexander conversation. And in order to do so, I will lean on my friend and friend of the show and NFL insider, Josina Anderson, who had this to say about the latest regarding the multi-time Pro Bowl corner who was released by the Green Bay Packers yesterday. Josina, as of this morning, was told that 6 teams made immediate inquiries about Jaire Alexander upon his release from the Packers on Monday. That's according to her league source. So we had this conversation, and since he was released, the Ravens have been named as a potential landing spot. A couple different outlets. CBS Sports, one of 2, 4, 6, 8 teams are the Ravens. That could be a potential landing spot. And PFF, my guy Trevor Sakema, who I saw in Indianapolis at the Combine, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The Ravens as one of 6 potential teams that would be a potential landing spot for Jaire Alexander. And while I may not be a huge advocate, given some of the challenges that could come with getting this done, I absolutely see them as a potential landing spot. I don't want to act as if this isn't realistic. I just have some reservations that I discussed in Monday's show. Go check it out if you haven't already done so. A lot of it has to do with overall health and trying to evaluate what you have in the youth, right? The Ravens have a lot of youth at the cornerback position, but I also understand that they are potentially one injury away from being thinner than thin and having more questions than they do answers. You've got Marlon Humphrey, you've got Nate Wiggins, and you've got, on paper, your Brandon Stevens replacement and Cheeto Awuzie, but Cheeto has some questions in the injury department, just like Jaire Alexander does, and I think that's probably one of the main reasons why Tennessee is willing to eat 7.5 M's just for Cheeto to suit up for another organization. Now, Jeff Zaribek of The Athletic, friend of the show, beat reporter for the Ravens, noted a couple different things in his latest. Go check it out. A subscription is absolutely worth it, by the way, at The Athletic. And I'll read directly from his latest. Ravens officials have predictably been mum about their interest level in Alexander, and that isn't surprising, Jeff writes. They tend to operate in the shadows, and the more that you hear about their interest level in a player, the less believable it is. However, DaCosta and the front office are always looking and making calls to see if there's a trade or free agent fit that it can improve the team. Alexander is also represented by Rock Nation's John Thornton, who has spent considerable time on the phone with Ravens officials in recent weeks. You want to know why? Well, he reps the recently extended Rashad Bateman. That was finalized last week, as we all learned. Thornton was at the Ravens Under Armour Performance Center when Bateman signed the deal. So while we can't sit here and guarantee that the Ravens are one of the 6 teams that Josina Anderson noted in this morning's tweet, if I am a betting man, given the importance of due diligence, given the familiarity with the player, given Lamar Jackson's friendship, right? Given the Louisville ties, and given, yes, the always need at corner, it would not surprise me if the Ravens were one of those 6 teams. More from Jeff, again, courtesy of his latest in The Athletic. If the topic ever turned to Alexander, only DaCosta or Thornton knows. However, you can be sure the Ravens are at least doing their due diligence, which is consistent with their approach every time a quality player becomes available. The Ravens don't make wow, and I'm air quoting wow, offers to free agents, particularly not in June when they are clinging to every bit of salary cap space they have, which is around $5 million. Don't believe what you see about that $18 million number. They have a bunch of future expenses that have to be accounted for. If a Lamar extension were to get done, obviously that number would skyrocket. But right now, it's around $4 or $5 million. The bet here is that Alexander will find he can make more money and have a more solidified role elsewhere with more motivated buyers than the Ravens. That would make this, quote, should they or shouldn't they sign him, end quote, debate a moot point. However, this is the Ravens we're talking about, and an accomplished player at a potential position of need is suddenly available. Did we mention that the player just happens to be close to Jackson from their days together at Louisville like I did? And Jeff summarizes and finishes things up by saying it feels like an obligation to at least explore the possibility. And I think that's fair, and I agree. But something that Jeff just alluded to me, would be a reservation, okay? Would give me, if I'm Jaire, hesitancy. And that is this positionless, if you will, defense that Zach Orr, John Harbaugh, and the Ravens defensive staff want, right? Safeties line up all over the field in the slot. Corners can play safety, right? It is truly a positionless defense. And when you have a unicorn like Kyle Hamilton at your disposal, of course you're going to want that. Will Jaire Alexander want that? Will he be okay eating some humble pie, if you will, if he's not out there for 100% of the defensive snaps? At this point in his career, does he feel like there's more money to be made? Or does he feel like he would sign a one-year prove-it deal to tell the entire NFL, hey, I can sustain health, and when healthy, and I'm going to show you I'm healthy, I'm still one of the best cover corners this entire league has to offer? I don't know. I'm not sure where he would be at. I understand the intrigue. I understand the vision. And I also would very much understand if the Ravens are indeed one of those 6 teams that look to be doing some preliminary early due diligence on Jaire Alexander, according to NFL insider Josina Anderson. From one DB to another, and it is at the safety position, which is a nice segue because let's be honest here, and I shouldn't say one safety to another. We know that Jaire is a corner. Bo Braid is a safety. He's a former undrafted rookie out of Maryland that snuck his way into the 53-man roster and was primarily a special teams player for the Ravens a year ago. As Jeff noted yesterday, he went down with what looks to be a serious injury. He couldn't put much weight on his leg as he was helped off the field by a trainer, according to Jeff. Jonas also noting that it seemed as if he couldn't put weight on both legs and referred to it as an apparent lower body injury. Now, is Bo expected to play a prominent role in 2025? No, I can't sit here and confidently tell you that. I don't even know if he's going to be on the 53-man roster. I hope he is. We had him on the show. He's a great kid. And looks like he could be a blossoming player that earns his role through special teams and then from there provides depth at the safety position. The problem is, if this is a serious injury for Bo, all of a sudden the Ravens are dealing with little depth at the safety position behind Kyle Hamilton and Malachi Starks. We know just weeks ago, Darius Washington tore his Achilles. I mentioned this earlier on in the stream. Darius did so in a conditioning session. It's going to cause him to miss a chunk, if not all of, the 2025 season. Now, John Harbaugh did say that it was a clean tear and he had a successful surgery, and we'll see if he's able to get back for a run down the stretch in the playoffs. But this is notable. And we know this time last year, right before our dark period, I think it was either late June, early July, the Ravens made the decision to go and sign Eddie Jackson. It didn't exactly work out for them, but he was the veteran that they were looking to have him provide some level of stability in playmaking. It didn't happen, and it led to really a disastrous start to the season when it comes to the pass defense. Maybe one of the reasons why, given what's happening right now at the safety position, that Zach Orr shared earlier this week, or I guess it was at the end of last week, that Jalen Armour-Davis, a 2022 fourth-round corner who's had limited availability throughout his years, is getting a look at safety. They're trying anything right now, is what this is telling me, because they understand, in wake of Darius, now in potential wake of Bo Braid being down, and already having issues, as it were, last year, albeit not down the stretch. It was the first half of the season, that they want to make sure that they can right their wrongs from a year ago throughout the entire duration of a 17-game season. And perhaps a dude that can be a major factor in doing exactly that is their first rounder in Georgia safety Malachi Starks, who shared a little story about a recent exchange, a 5 a.m. exchange, that is, with new assistant on the secondary, a former NFL head coach, and a former Baltimore Ravens assistant, and Chuck Pagano.
Told Chuck when I first got here, I was like, you remind me of Muschamp a lot, Will Muschamp. I was like, you're not as fiery. Muschamp will snap in a minute. But I was like, just the way they go about their business, and just like the knowledge of football that they both have. He texted me like at 5 this morning with film from Thursday practice. And I woke up, I was like, okay, cool, like that makes sense. So just being able to have somebody, like that's how I want to be coached. I received that very well. So just being able to have somebody like that in my corner, it's a blessing.
You see what I meant earlier on when I mentioned a masterclass in mental fortitude? That's what Malachi Starks showed to me in a simple little clip from a text that he received at 5 o'clock in the morning from Chuck Pagano, giving him feedback from the previous Thursday's OTA film that he was watching. First of all, Chuck still got the itch. And Malachi receives feedback well. What an awesome trait. What an awesome attribute that he brings to the NFL level. This dude is trying to get his feet from under him. The correct usage of that phrase, not feet out from underneath him. Shout out my friend. Let me make sure I pull up the email to get her name right. Shout out my friend Beth, who emailed me about my grammar and jargon yesterday. See, I'm implementing it now. Malachi and I are apparently cut from the same cloth, Beth. We both are receptive to feedback. You got to love it. Tila, I see you and hear you getting after me for different phrases. But that's not grammatical errors. That's just crutch phrases. So keep it coming, Tila. Thank you. But Beth has got me. And I think Malachi has got himself covered right now, because this is a player that understands who he is, that's been all in on the offseason process, and now has an opportunity in front of him to not just be a contributor in the back end of this Ravens defense, but be a sticking point, be a true mainstay alongside Kyle Hamilton, knowing what's happened around him thus far. He just picked off Cooper Rush in a recent OTA. He's learning the terminology. He's learning the playbook. He's getting to know his teammates. He says that Roquan Smith is somebody, obviously, as they have in their blood, really, as Georgia Bulldogs, is somebody that's already kind of establishing. Well, there's nothing to be established if you're Roquan. He's clearly the captain of the defense, but it hasn't taken Malachi long at all to understand who Roquan is and what he represents for this team. And I thought this was a really impressive, yes, simple, but a really impressive display of who Malachi Starks is and what the Ravens are getting in him. He also shared who his toughest cover has been thus far. And he thought about it for a good long second or so, and ultimately not stumbled, but shared that it was Isaiah Likely. And how could it not be Isaiah Likely? He's a tough cover, man, for anybody. Listen to Malachi.
He's a great vet, man. Just being able to, we were just sitting over here talking, so just being able to learn from him and just all the ball that he's seen, all the people that he's played with. Just for me to be able to sit in the same meeting room and be like, hey, like when they do this, what do you think about this or whatever? And then just, his character. I mean, he's a funny, goofy guy. I mean, not what I expect him to be whatsoever. He's awesome, man. I'm blessed to be here with a vet like him and a lot of the guys in the room.
Glowing their remarks of Marlon Humphrey, but the one that I actually wanted was, again, him talking about the toughest cover team-wide so far.
That's tough. Isaiah. I had a rep against Isaiah the other day. And he's a lot quicker than what he looks on TV and in person. So, like I said, just being able to learn from him, just the knowledge that he's had while he's been here, and just the way that he does things. Every tight end is a little different, but he's very quick. He very knowledgeable about the game of ball. So just being able to go against him, it's only making me better.
Iron sharpens iron. He's a lot quicker than what he looks on TV and in person, Malachi says about number 80. Isaiah likely gearing up for a contract year. There's going to be some great training camp battles that we're going to be watching and covering over the course of the next couple of months leading into this season. And one of those guys that could be battling his butt off, right? Jockeying for playing time and earning his keep within the defensive line is Aeneas Peebles, the defensive tackle out of Virginia Tech. Dennis Johnson is the Ravens defensive line coach, and he referred to Peebles as a player that has a, quote, elite get-off. The Ravens have high hopes for him, but Johnson, meaning, again, the Ravens defensive line coach, said he needs to improve technically. Jonas Schaefer's tweet from yesterday. Aeneas is the same guy who, the day he was drafted, basically went on a Twitter spree. He's quieted that down a little bit, but I, for one, especially having spoken at length with his college football head coach, right? Coach Pry from Virginia Tech. I happen to think that if there's a day 3 pick that could surprise some of us over the next couple of years, this might be that player. You guys know that I am high on Teddy Buchanan, the linebacker out of Cal. I believe he was day 2, if I'm not mistaken, or early day 3. My memory's slipping me on that one. But if there is a player that's more of a surprise in terms of his involvement, his development over the next couple of years, I think I'd have to go with Aeneas Peebles. The guy just reeks of Raven-like, doesn't he? One of the many battles, one of the many players that is going to be super compelling as the summer begins and the Ravens are at full strength. Mandatory minicamp June 17th to the 19th, training camp late July. That's what we have to look forward to.